начинать. Меня зовут Walid.
Hello, colleagues. We'll begin. My name is
И сегодня
Walid,
я
Security Vision
расскажу
Company,
вам про
and
наш
today
опыт
I will talk
промышленного
about our
внедрения
experience of
системы UEBA.
corporate
Какие у
introduction
нас
of
там произошли
UEBA
случаи,
systems,
кейсы, сценарии и так
what
далее,
cases
и
we
чему
had and
нас эта, в принципе,
scenarios,
научила.
and what we learned from this.
Сначала давайте разберемся, что вообще
First of
такое
all,
UEBA.
let me tell you
Главная
what
аббревиатура
UEBA
расшифровывается как
is,
User
and this abbreviation
Analytics, то есть
stands
анализ
for
сущности
User and Entity Behavior Analytics.
И суть данной системы в том, что
And the idea of the
она
system is
выискивает аномальные
that
паттерны
it
поведения в
looks
инфраструктуре.
for
Ну, для того, чтобы
anomaly
выискать
patterns
аномалии,
of
сначала нужно,
behavior.
конечно, построить нормальные,
In order
поэтому она
to
получает
detect
инпут
anomalies, so first it has to
через
have like a
события
normal thing. So it for the input it gets
инфраструктуры,
events of the
выстраивает
infrastructure,
типовые модели и
it
уже после
builds
этого
typical
классифицирует в
models,
них
and
аномалии,
after
которые
that it
могут
detects
служить
anomalies in
индикаторами
them
вредоносной активности.
that can indicate malware activity.
Рассмотрим схему работы.
Let's
Здесь
look
мы
at the
сначала
scheme,
подаем
how it
вход
works.
сырые события с
First,
таких систем, как
we
сетевые
input kind
устройства,
of raw events
непосредственно
from such
тестовые
things
события
as
с Windows, с
network
Linux, ну,
devices,
либо
from Linux,
уже готовые потоки из CM,
or
дата-лейковых
ready
и тому
flows
подобное.
from CMs
После
and
чего они
other things.
проходят
After that,
через три движка.
they go
Это
through three
математическая
engines.
статистика, машин learning
This is
и
mathematical
корреляция.
statistics, machine
И
learning,
в
and
результате
correlation.
этого генерируются
And as a
алерты.
result of that,
Алерты —
we
это пока
generate
еще не
alerts.
инциденты, это просто
Alerts, they're
какие-то
not
сработки
incidents
по
yet.
объектам. И
This is
инцидент
just
будет
alerts
создан,
on
если
each
таких
object. An
сработок
incident will be
наберется
generated
достаточное количество
if you have
по
enough
одному
of such
объекту за
alerts
сутки.
per
Как
object
определяется
per
достаточное
day.
количество? У каждого
And how
правила,
to
которые
determine
генерируют алерты,
the
есть
sufficient
свой
number?
вес.
So each rule
Честного
for
алерта
generating
есть свой
alerts,
этот
there
вес.
is a certain
И
weight. An
если мы
alert has a
наберем
weight
алертов
too.
с весом в
So,
сумме
and
больше
you
сотни
have a number of
за
alerts
сутки, то тогда мы
is
можем сказать,
in
что
the
это
amount of
инцидент.
more than
Соответственно,
100 for
можем
24 hours.
настроить как
So
вес
then you can say
самих
it's an
алертов,
incident. And
так
of course, you
и
can set it up for both for
порог
alerts,
100, ну
and you
и
can set up this threshold of
также
100.
период времени 24 часа тоже можно настроить.
And
После
also you
того,
can
как мы
set up
создали
the
инцидент,
period of
мы
time,
уже
24 hours.
можем
But
дальше
after you
проводить его
generated an
анализ,
incident,
расследование,
you can
передавать в
analyze it,
другие
investigate it,
системы, типа SAR,
and
CM и
you
тому подобное.
can send it to other systems like SOAR or CM.
Немного подробнее про движки.
A little bit
Математическая
more
статистика. Здесь у нас
details about
есть
engines.
определенное
Mathematical
количество правил, там
statistics.
порядка 50.
There is a number of
И
rules,
глобально они
about 50 of them,
подразделяются на
and
правила фактора
globally
новизны и
they're
по
broken down
фактору
on the
объема.
factor of how fresh they
Ну,
are and the factor
правила по
of
фактору
volume.
новизны — это банально
The
все, что появилось
freshness
первый раз,
factor,
либо оно
this is
супер
something
редко.
that
То есть
showed
это
up for
нестандартное
the
источник
first time
подключения для
or is
юзера,
very rare. It's a non-standard
нестандартное
source of
время
connection for the
подключения,
user,
нетипичное УЗ
a
на конкретном
non-standard
хосте и тому подобное.
time, or
Превышение
something else.
объемных показателей —
Yeah.
это, ну, скажем,
Exceeding
аномальные объемы
volume
входящего трафика, массовое
values.
количество файлов
This is
США
the
и
volume of traffic,
всё
the
такое.
maximum download,
Дальше у нас
and
есть
many
machine
other
learning.
things.
Здесь
Machine
он
learning.
представлен несколькими
Here
моделями, которые
we have
делятся
several
на
models.
supervised модели. Они обычны на
There is
open source
supervised models.
датасетах, и в них
They
подмешиваются реальные данные
learn
с
from open
инфраструктуры,
source
которые мы
data
контролируем.
sets, and they
Также
will also
есть
get
unsupervised
real
модели,
data from the
которые проходили
infrastructure. Then
обучение без
unsupervised
учителя,
models
чисто на
that learned
данных
without
заказчика.
a teacher, so
Ну
to
и
speak,
есть
just using
такие типичные
data
модели
of a
DGA фишинга,
client,
которые ищут
and DGA
несимметричные
phishing
названия,
models that are looking
случайно выбор
for
букв, слов и так далее. Ну и корреляция
random
представлена в
letters
всем
and
нам
words.
знакомыми правилами.
Correlation, we know the rules from CMs
Здесь
and other
они
systems.
заточены под реалию UEBA, они выискивают какие-то
They
типовые
are
паттерны, там,
adapted
запуск
for UEBA system. They're
подозрительных
looking for patterns.
процессов,
They're looking for
подозрительными костями и
suspicious
так далее.
processes, scripts with
Эти
some
правила
suspicious
сделаны специально
keys.
легковесными, чтобы
These
они
rules
могли
are pretty
обрабатываться на лету без
light-weighted,
необходимости
so they're done on the
сохранять, потому
fly.
что,
They're
как
processed on
правило,
the fly
в
without
компаниях
the need to
при
save
таких
them.
внедрениях у нас
Because in big companies, when we
поток
have
может
such
быть большой,
implementations, the
порядка 50-100
incoming
ипсов,
flow
и,
can be quite
конечно,
big,
в таком случае
5
это большой
to
плюс для
50
производителя.
ipsos, and so it's in this case, when they're not saved, it can be pretty good for performance. So now main stages of implementation. In our case,
Сначала идет непосредственно установка самого
first we had
условно.
installation of the product itself. Then we set up integrations with everything, both inside the company and outside. Then we work with sources.
Цикличные этапы, можно сказать, и не
And here we have cyclical stages, and they're not the same everywhere. First, how it works, we plugged in the flow of network events. So we let models learn from this. So then we analyzed those generated incidents. We found the exceptions. Then we brought the host events. Then we finished training of it. And
другие источники с каких-нибудь прикладов.
Then we could get some other sources. And so we go through this cycle. And actually, the order is not that important. Here, I highlighted with the color the critical stages of it.
Чем вообще вот важна настройка интеграции для обогащения?
So, what is so important about setting up the integration to enrich the system? So, it's pretty banal, actually.
Поток данных, то нам
So, if we have just raw data coming in, so it's very hard to analyze it.
Тем больше контекста мы
And
получим.
the more we enrich it, the more context we
У
get.
нас будет не просто
For example,
и
we have not just a username
инциденте, как вот
that
здесь,
participates in the incident, like here on the screen, but we need to know their full name, department, and what the groups they're in.
То же самое с хостами, URL-ами.
The same with hosts and URLs.
Мы
domain names.
IP-шник, а можем увидеть
We-
еще и контекст с
We need to see the context,
скорингом,
geolocations,
подключим
country, scoring.
URL-сканы, вирус-тоталы и тому подобное.
If we
Первым делом мы интегрируемся максимально
first we integrate
с источниками подобной контекстной информации, чтобы потом
with the sources of such context information, so it would be easy for us to analyze it later.
Ну и наступает самый важный этап
And
в таких
the
внедрениях.
most
это
important stage
непосредственно анализ.
in such implementation, this is analysis.
Почему вообще важен анализ? Ну,
Why analysis is so
любая
important?
система, связанная с
UEBA, as any system that has to do with the behavior predictive analysis,
теоретически точно будет генерировать ложные
it will generate
Нельзя
false
это, конечно,
positives.
просто так оставлять, потому
And we
что
can't just
для организации это
leave
будет
it unattended, because in any organization,
типичных, но
we
много
can
будет еще и уникальных, которые будут разниться. от
identify
организации
quite
к
typical ones, but there also can be some unique ones that will be different from one organization to another, depending on their business processes and organizational structure.
Важно
That's why it's important
тесной связи с представителями заказчика,
together
инциденты,
with the
которые
client,
поступают, и уменьшать их
analyze incidents that come to us and reduce the number of them.
количество.
Here on the slide,
Такой этап самый
you can
первичный,
see
когда у нас
the
количество
initial
инцидентов
stage of it,
доходило
when the number of
до
incidents
нескольких сотен в день, после того,
got
как
to
мы
100
привели
a
всё
day,
это в
few hundreds a day.
нормальный вид,
And after
убрав, явные
We
ложные
kind of
срабатывания,
normalized
мы
it.
пришли
We
к
excluded
количеству
false positives.
единиц инцидентов в день. То есть меньше.
We got to less than 10 a day.
Теперь давайте
than 10 incidents.
рассмотрим несколько сценариев,
Now let's
этих,
look at several scenarios
случаев, с которыми мы столкнулись непосредственно.
of the cases that
Опять же, они
we
типичны
had
для конкретной
during the implementation. So they're pretty typical for an organization here. Some of them can be extrapolated
Придется
to other organizations. Some of them can't.
конкретной компании.
So you have to really dive into the specificity of each company. So this case number one, I think it could be extrapolated. It's pretty typical.
Где особенно email
They began to receive a lot of incidents, and email models, they were not happy with what was going on in the network. It was pretty messy. Everybody was responding, feeding back to that server. So we started talking to infrastructure people. We started asking what are the roles of those servers. Everything was pretty logical. For example, it was proxy server that the whole organization goes to internet. Obviously, there will be a lot of traffic from all sides to all sides, and there's no point to look at it. It's not going to give us any valuable information. The same thing with mail relays and telecommunications. And of course, maybe it's important to study infrastructure of the client and to learn where those servers are, but it's not always possible. And usually you have to deal with this just by fact of receiving those false positives. The second case, dependent on the order in organization. We noticed that there were regular incidents when the same user hooks up to the same host from different IP addresses, 10.05 one address, 10.10 another address, and it turned out it's many more like this. We started trying to find out what it was. That was a system of providing remote access to users that work remotely. That system gives them new IPs constantly. So initially it was very difficult to predict that that would be the case.
Далее у нас идет хостовая активность.
Case number 3, this is host activity. It also depends a lot on what you use in the organization and you consider legitimate. Here, what we had, some applications were suspiciously active. They created a named channel on the hosts. And usually that's considered a suspicious marker. But with components of virtualization of workplace, like Citrix, so we had to improve the rules and to make sure that the rules follow what's happening in reality.
Сложилась ситуация. Мы увидели, что множество пользователей, не прям все, но реально большое количество.
A different situation. We turned out that quite a number of users, they started referring to all files.
Собственно, тут нам помог как раз-таки тот контекст, который мы интеграции с AD. Проанализировали, что общего у этих пользователей.
To analyze what is similar with the users, it turned out that these users are in certain departments. That's why they share files, shared folders. So we started learning from the client. So what's happening, and it was pretty simple, that users in those departments, they, when they come to work, when they go to their workstations, they get to network disk, and when the user opens their computer and searches for a file, it searches the file everywhere and on shared folders and shared servers as well. So we corrected the rule so that only not any query should be investigated, but only when the file is used. So the case 5, also quite interesting. So you could predict it, but only if you have a list of servers. We learned that there is a list of servers. There are many events, authentication events, with hundreds of users. And it seemed like hundreds of users, they're logging in to the same host. And it triggered the alert. Looking at the name of the host and the 2 letters of the host, these are all domain controllers that generate events. Here, 4769. It seems like a Cerberus, and it's okay that the domain controller has authentication of all users that use Cerberus. Of course, we excluded these events on the servers. and we get rid of this
Этот кейс
rule
связан
2. This
скорее
case,
с
case number
человеческим
6,
фактором.
has to do more with the human factor.
После разбора все стало очень
And after we analyzed it, things
Здесь мы
cleared up.
столкнулись с обнаружением, когда на
Here we got a detection when on one of the hosts
учетной записью
there was a login from non-typical user account and non-typical processes were triggered. And from a temporary catalog, it's a pretty common marker of malactivity.
Но здесь все оказалось легитимно.
So here things turned out to be pretty legit. It turned out that the IT officer
работы на сервере,
was doing some technical work on the server. And since the guy was doing it for the first time, since the system was implemented, we knew nothing about this activity. Besides, we didn't know any integration with any internal system where such tasks, such works could be taken into account, and so that we would have known in advance that such tasks would be performed.
Здесь мы
Case number 7.
что происходят массовые
Here we see
в которых фигурирует
mass
подозрительный URL. Ну, он
network queries,
не прям malicious,
and it was a quite suspicious URL. It wasn't malicious one.
спам-рассылках китайских.
We saw what it was. It was working with spam links from China.
DNS-запросы
it turned out there were DNS queries.
упорно в течение долгого периода времени
For a long time, quite consistently, it was trying to resolve this suspicious URL.
Там особо вообще уже никто и не помнит. Они были неправильно.
In fact, as it turned out, that those DNS servers, nobody remembered about them. They were wrongly set up. We reset them, and those queries stopped.
Ну и последний кейс, он
Case number 8,
для всех
pretty typical
моделей,
for all DGA phishing models
мимикрирующие названия сайтов,
that are looking for
наборы слов и букв.
site names that are mimicking.
Легитимном сайте есть русские слова, написанные
If in the site there are Russian words written in English, then for such models, this will be this random number of letters or words.
Что тут можно сделать? Ну, конкретно здесь
What can be done here?
Пишешь, даже если дообучить такие модели на русском,
Even if you train such models
написано транслитом, все равно он будет агриться
that
на
it's written in
например,
Russian but with Latin letters, so it will be detecting it as abbreviations. So but on the other hand, you shouldn't be turning off such models completely, because sometimes these models give you quite often interesting things. For example,
известный домен типа Яндекс,
some famous domain like Yandex, one letter changed. Instead of A, you have Z or B. There are many of such letters. Or it generated some random letters that we saw on the previous slide. So, of course, you shouldn't be completely turn this off. Probably you have to come up with a registry of legitimate sites and add them there along the way when you have such alerts coming. Okay, summing up. I already mentioned most of it. Well, first of all, the main stage of such implementation is the analysis of incidents that you already have, and you need to make exceptions, necessary exceptions. You need to set it up and let it correct it itself. That'd be great, but it's very hard to get it. That's why analysis of incidents is very important. And to make it successful, you have to have as much as possible of enriched data. Because for the person who is non-employee of the organization, it's very hard to understand what's happening in the organization. So It's probably a legitimate activity that we're just not aware of. So that's why integration and enrichment helps you a lot when you analyze incidents. And of course, all that should be done in a close contact with the client, because you never know their kind of internal operations, and nobody will tell you about that but them. So this knowledge is important, and you need to understand what's happening. If the activity is legitimate, is it a false positive or it's a real threat? So with this, I would like to finish. Thank you very much. Thank you for your attention.